All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to deconstruct the anatomy of an evolving power, an ability that literally grows and changes with its user. And for our case study, we'll be breaking down this really fascinating fan-made stand called Granite moulder, tracking it from what starts as a pretty simple tool all the way to a reality-bending force of nature.
But before we can even get into the whole evolution part, we need to get the fundamentals down. See, we're in a world where your fighting spirit isn't just some metaphor. It's something that can be brought into the physical world as a weapon you can actually measure.
And that weapon? It's called a stand. To put it simply, it's this entity that's psychically generated from its user's own life force. It stands right there beside you. It fights for you. And the cool part is, every single one has its own unique supernatural power.
Now, the thing is, these powers aren't just pulled out of thin air. Nope, they're actually quantified, measured by 6 key parameters. And these stats, they're going to be our roadmap for tracking Granite moulder's incredible evolution.
So, here are the big 6. Destructive power, speed, range, stamina, precision, and maybe the most important one for us, developmental potential. Each of these gets a grade, from E, which is, pretty bad, all the way up to A for absolutely top tier. This system gives us a really clear way to see exactly how a stand's power shifts and grows over time. So, let's start at the beginning with its first form, Act 1. And right off the bat, you'll see this thing is not your typical brawler. It's much more like a clever, long-range tool designed for sabotage. Its main ability is called cohesive bonding. And I want to be super clear here. This is not superglue. We're talking about a pure physical fusion of matter on a molecular level. Once 2 objects are bonded by this power, they cannot be pulled apart by brute force. Period. Okay, now look at these stats. Its destructive power is a D. It can't punch its way out of a paper bag. But, and this is a huge but, that's completely balanced by an incredible A rank in range, which is effective up to 50 meters, and an A in precision for pinpoint accuracy. This thing isn't a sledgehammer, it's a surgeon's scalpel.
And this is where its genius really shines. From half a football field away, its user can fuse the firing pin inside a sniper's rifle, fuse an enemy's shoes directly to the asphalt, or even secretly fuse their pockets shut in the middle of a crowd. It completely controls the battlefield, without ever having to throw a single punch.
All right, let's move to the next stage and see how this all builds. Act 2 is where the power evolves, and I mean dramatically. It goes from just manipulating matter that's already there to straight up breaking the fundamental laws of physics.
So, here's the massive conceptual leap, right? It's not just sticking things together anymore. It now has something called impossible property molding, which means it can change what things fundamentally are to force them to fuse in ways that should be scientifically impossible. And whoa, look at the stats. Destructive power jumps all the way from a D to a B, and speed hits A rank. But here it is, our first major trade-off. Its effective range has been more than cut in half, dropping down to just 20 meters. As the power gets more and more complex, it needs to be closer to its user.
The applications here are just terrifyingly versatile. It can literally pull the carbon dioxide out of the air and mold it into a solid, suffocating helmet around someone's head. It can fuse a speeding bullet to the empty air it's flying through, just stopping it dead in its tracks. Or it could touch a steel shield and give it the property of glass, making it shatter with a single tap.
And that brings us to its final, mastered form. This is where the power escalates one last time. It's no longer just breaking the laws of physics, it's rewriting reality itself.
Yeah, this is a monumental shift into what's known as a HAX ability. Existence and quantity molding means it can manipulate abstract concepts. We're talking about molding the very fabric of time, of space, of causality, making a traditional fight completely and utterly irrelevant. And here we see the final, most dramatic trade-off. It now has A ranks across the board in power, speed, stamina, and precision. But its range, it has collapsed to a D, just 2 meters. To use this godlike power, the user has to be in extremely close quarters combat. And notice that developmental potential is now an E. That means it can't evolve any further. This is it. Absolute mastery. So right here, we see the core cost of this evolution laid out perfectly. As its ability to rewrite existence becomes absolute, its physical reach just narrows down to almost nothing. Gaining ultimate power meant sacrificing the safety that comes with distance. So how does this crazy power even work? Well, it's not a simple punch.
It's more like a surgical protocol. With that A-rank precision, if it strikes a limb, it freezes only that limb in time and space, effectively bolting the victim to the air. But if it lands a clean strike on the torso, it triggers total temporal stasis, freezing their entire existence within a single second.
And if that wasn't terrifying enough, there's a horrifying side effect: temporal erosion. While the victim is frozen, their cells are forced to endure the weight of all the time that's passing around them. If they're ever released, they might emerge having aged decades in an instant. And if they're left in that stasis for too long, their body just erodes into dust.
This is where the power just gets wild, truly abstract. It can literally attack concepts. So if an opponent has a so-called perfect defense, ACT3 can touch them and mold the concept of their success to be brittle, causing their guaranteed winning move to just shatter. It can even work as a top-tier healing factor, allowing the user to mold their own body back to a state before they were ever injured.
So when you put it all together, you realize these aren't three separate powers. It's one cohesive, escalating system. The real question is, how would a master user wield all three forms together in a single, absolutely devastating strategy?
The combat flow is just a perfect checkmate. You start with Act 1 from a safe 50 meters out, trapping your opponent, disabling their gear. Then you switch to Act 2 to completely control the battlefield, stopping any incoming projectiles with the air anchor. And once they're pinned down and defenseless, you deploy Act 3, mold the distance between you and them to 0, and land a single, fight-ending touch. It is a completely inescapable trap.
You know, this entire power is really about molding concepts into reality, from simple matter all the way up to the laws of physics and time itself, which it leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to chew on. If you had this power to take one abstract concept and make it physically real, what would you choose?